Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Welcome home again to our New York City project, Brooklyn to be specific. Today we're going to be taking a closer look at the construction progress. We're not finished with demolition, but we're already starting to put up the walls, put down the plywood for the new floor decks. We're also taking you on a little tour of the Brooklyn Waterfront to see some historic sites. Stick around. It's good to have you home again. Well, if you didn't join us last week, we're in a part of Brooklyn called Dumbo, down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass, a very hot neighborhood. And this particular building, which is from about 1835, is in the midst of redevelopment as 3 apartments and a storefront, and demolition is underway. We've taken down the elevator shaft which had been put in here, and we're saving all the brick, as many as we can, just in case they're needed for facade restoration. The ground floor is going to be a commercial space, as I said, but let's get up to the second floor, meet my son Chris, who's working on the project with me, and talk about the layout. Hi, Chris. How are we doing?
Good. How are you?
So this is our 3rd week here.
Yes.
Are we on schedule?
We are doing as well as we could be for 3 weeks into this project. Right now we're finishing up a little bit of demolition, sort of cleaning up the last of the bricks that we removed from the old elevator shaft.
Right.
We've also got a crew that's just come in this week, starting up all the framing.
That would be Dino's Construction.
Dino's Construction, exactly.
Okay.
So he's just starting up on his job, and then actually starting tomorrow, we're going to be power washing the facade, which just had its ancient fire escape removed.
Oh, good, but it looks like somebody's been sandblasting inside the building.
You're right, absolutely. They were in here last week, and they sandblasted all the pilings and all the interior bricks.
So this is the 2nd floor.
This is the 2nd floor. It'll be
an apartment.
Right,
There'll be a
the
3rd floor and a 4th floor apartment.
Right.
And let's take a look at what the proposed layout is here.
So coming up from the central staircase, we get into the middle of the apartment here. And I think, as we mentioned, each of the units in the building is going to have a separate layout.
Yeah.
But for this particular one, you're coming into the middle here. You're going into a large living room, 14 by 23. It leads into a galley kitchen here. You come out, you've got a bathroom, and then 2 bedrooms, each with its own pretty large closet space.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's lots of big closets.
Lots of big closets. You've got plenty of light. 1 big window in each of the bedrooms, and then we have also got that 3rd window, which we reclaimed after the elevator shaft came in.
Fabulous. Okay, good plan. All right, I'm going to go up to the next floor and see what's happening.
Okay.
All right, so we just have a little bit of a temporary ladder situation here, but as I was saying earlier, the demolition is still underway. As you can see, on every floor we've got rubble, but construction is well underway. If you look overhead, you can tell in this area right here, we've already placed some of the floor joists, and you can see the bottom side of our plywood. There were certain areas where the joist had been previously damaged, and they had to be, replaced, sistered in some instances. If you look over here, the beam has been sandblasted. All the posts and beams throughout the structure were really covered in grease and grime from a century of industrial use here. So much of that has been corrected now. And this will be exposed finished surfaces. And if you look across the whole width of the space, it's going to be pretty dramatic, because the design is going to incorporate all of these existing structural members. Over on this side of the building, the party wall, the exterior wall, which is 2 or 3 courses of brick, has been sandblasted as well. This is interior brick. It's okay to sandblast it. I believe they use something which is called a glass bead, a little black beauty. It does leave kind of a pocked, porous surface on what is essentially a soft brick. You would never want to do this on the exterior facade of the building, because when you break the surface of the brick like that, you're really creating a situation where it will deteriorate in the weather in winters to come, and you just don't want to do that. But on the inside of the building, it's really okay to do it. This is an interesting unfinished area to look at. We've got most of our plywood subflooring in place, except for this area, which is just now being restructured. The elevator was here. So the elevator shaft went all the way down from the basement up to the roof, and we've removed all the brick partitioning that was enclosing the elevator, and that's why you see piles of brick everywhere. We restructured it using the same size joists, same full dimensional size, so the structure is the same as it always should have been. And right now, we're just about ready to put the last couple of pieces, and Dino, our carpenter here, is just going to be making one cut. And Dino and Reggie Ray, who's here from GP, are just going to set that one sheet. Go ahead, fellas. Now this is, Reggie, this is a Southern Yellow Pine plywood product, right?
That's correct.
Now, what's it called?
Georgia Pacific Southern Yellow Pine Tone Groove Sturdy Floor.
Okay, come on over here and let's take a look at it before he starts fastening it. Because I've used it before, and it's a real sturdy...
Definite sturdy, very versatile as far as when it comes to floor coverings.
Yeah.
A number of different items can be installed over this, whether it be hardwood floors, carpet, vinyl tile, or even ceramic tile.
Now, much floor decking in the industry nowadays is done with OSB, oriented strand board, which
correct.
is perfectly fine and meets a lot of code requirements. But this is harder stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely. The plywood is actually 10% stiffer than the oriented strand board. Because it's made out of full sheets of veneer, it's also holds screws very well and also nails very well. So it eliminates squeaks and nail pops.
Yeah, well, the tongue and groove aspect of it is something that I've always thought made a lot of sense. Because when you have a tongued and grooved joint, it's just that much stronger.
Exactly. It kind of ties the whole floor together. It also eliminates the need for blocking in between your support members.
It does, huh?
Absolutely.
Once you put it together, the T&G makes it a complete membrane so that you don't need to put blocking in between the joists.
Correct.
Okay, and how do we fasten it?
You use adhesive nails, screws, and it never hurts to put some adhesive across the support members as well.
Terrific, thanks. The New York Water Taxi is a relatively new venture started by Tom Fox, which is servicing Manhattan as well as Brooklyn and really offering tourists and residents a wonderful opportunity to get to know the waterfront. We just joined him a little bit earlier to learn a little bit about the Brooklyn side of the river. All right, Tom, you got to describe this because it's a very unusual set of wreckage and old buildings that we're looking at here. What's what?
This is Erie Basin.
On the left over here?
On the left is a set of old Civil War warehouses that used to be 2 stories higher. There's a local guy who's come in to redevelop the neighborhood for manufacturing. His name is Greg O'Connell. He's a former detective. He used to work here. And he believes that creating jobs is important for the neighborhood, so there are glass blowers.
So
and
instead of
prop shops.
gentrifying it into wealthy people's housing, he's turned it into kind of cooperative working space?
Well, it's a decade of work. It used to be public property that was abandoned.
I see. And then this is definitely abandoned, what's in front of us.
Yes.
It was a sugar refinery?
Yeah, that's the old Revere Sugar Refinery, and there's a sunken lightship right here.
Wait a minute. Yeah, those 2 masts. It's a sunken lightship. When did it sink?
It sank about 5 years ago. They brought it in here because it was a protected harbor. It was a storm, a hurricane coming or something like that.
Right.
And then somebody, either the pump failed or somebody turned the switch off.
And it sank on the dock.
Yeah, during the course of an afternoon, the entire thing sank. They have photographs of it slowly going down. It's really
That's a sad
pity.
story. Now, Tom, I think we're looking at the last remnants of the Brooklyn waterfront that is still actively in operation, right?
That's right.
In this area here?
This is Atlantic Basin, and Universal Marine and American Stevedoring are 2 companies that are operating out of here. You can see the scale of the vessels is smaller.
Yeah.
It's still containerization. What killed the Brooklyn waterfront was a change from break bulk, where things came in on pallets
Right.
and were put onto truck,
Right.
to containerization.
Yeah.
And that stopped the proverbial, it fell off a truck,
Right.
because everything was more secure in the container.
Sure.
But you needed upland property, which Brooklyn didn't have. So the industry moved to Port Elizabeth and Port Newark in New Jersey.
And the whole
where there was more
flavor,
space.
the whole flavor of the waterfront changed from the movie, The Waterfront with Brando,
Right.
and the stevedores and all that. All of a sudden, you didn't have as many longshoremen here, right?
And you didn't have the restaurants that fed them, or the people, the adjacent housing was no longer in walking distance to work.
Yeah. And what will be happening along the rest of this waterfront, where we're looking at all the blue warehouses?
From Brooklyn, from the Manhattan Bridge around to Pier 6, which is Atlantic Avenue, where the gray warehouses are, that will be a park called the Brooklyn Bridge Park. The blue buildings are now up for discussion. It's again the public debate, what happens with our waterfront. Some of us believe there should be mixtures on the waterfront, like Greg's, commercial, manufacturing,
Right.
park, residential, and commercial maritime.
Right.
So how do you strike that balance? And there's now a series of public hearings for Piers 6 through 12 to basically decide their fate. The Port Authority of New York, New Jersey is the owner, and we wrestled Brooklyn Bridge Park away from them in about a 10-year struggle, but we all celebrate victory today. And they've gotten the idea that they might be able to use this for something other than what they're using it for now.
Tom, we're looking at Brooklyn Heights here, which is a beautiful residential area, but right in front of us, it looks so commercial and industrial.
It was the working waterfront, and in the 1950s, Robert Moses put this highway that you see stacked on one another.
Right.
There was a battle between the community, which was fairly affluent, and Moses came up with a compromise, rare for Robert Moses, with a compromise plan where he stacked the highway and he put a promenade above it.
Now we're approaching Dumbo.
Yeah, we're on the cusp between Brooklyn Heights and Dumbo, which is the large-scale manufacturing buildings.
Overpass, right, in
Right.
between the Brooklyn and the Manhattan bridges. Okay, so now we're as close as we can get to the Brooklyn Bridge, and we're really looking at the most historic part of the waterfront here in Brooklyn. Isn't this where the original Fulton's Ferry landing was?
Yes, this is where the Claremont, the Fulton Ferry, was launched from.
This is one of the stops for this water taxi service.
This is the first stop on the New York water taxi.
Which runs all around to the lower tip of Manhattan and up the west side, up the Hudson River, right?
Correct.
So that if you're a tourist coming to New York, you can really buy a day pass and...
Yeah, you can hop off. You can go to Patsy Grimaldi's Pizzeria,
Yeah, and then keep
or
on
go
going
up to the Chelsea Piers, or see the whole island.
Tom, thanks. Great tour.
Thank you.
All right, let's join Dino from Dino's Construction. And they work so fast that I'm a little bit leery about interrupting them. But Dino, why do you prefer metal studs here in the city?
It's more light and they don't warp.
Those are two good reasons. Yeah, easier to work with because they're not as heavy, and it's steel, so you don't have to worry about warpage like you do with 2x4s. And there's nothing to cutting them, just a tin snip, and they go right into place. And Marino's going to go ahead and fasten them. Now, "16-inch centers, and they're put together with self-tapping screws."
Yes.
Now, this is also going directly over a brick wall, and although we will be putting insulation in there and eventually a vapor barrier, it's still a situation where you got masonry, which can wick moisture. And again, it's nice to have steel. So you cut them all and you put them in place and fasten them at the base first. And then once they're fastened at the bottom, you'll plumb them up and fasten them at the top. And that's all you have to put in, just one screw per stud top there.
6/6.
Yeah, 6/6 off the back. What Dino's laying out here is essentially a perpendicular wall. Now, we're on the third floor, which is a one-bedroom unit, as opposed to the one below and the one above, which are two bedrooms. And what we're doing right now is putting up a wall that's perpendicular to the masonry walls to create a walk-in closet. Then there's going to be a bathroom, then a big galley kitchen in the front end. But right now, let's look at how they put down the metal stud work for this partition. So it's 6'6" off the back wall, which brings it right to the edge of the existing post here. And what we're doing is we're going to be marrying new walls and probably hiding part of this post. And watch how he cuts this, because it's so quick. Tin snips, make 2 snips on the side, bend it down, and cut right across. And then position this along your chalk line. And Marino's just going to fasten it down with the self-tapping screws. What's the height there, Dino?
99 and a half. Level, Marino. Okay, go on.
Is there some trick to putting up the top plate when you've got open joist work like this?
Yes, you have to put some track because it's not enough good to screw the
Right, there's no
top
place
track.
to fasten it to.
Uh-huh.
So what he's doing is he's basically making some cuts and twisting those around. And so let me see that. Essentially, we got that shape, and he'll put that up across to span in between the 2 joists. There you go.
Bravo, Marino, one more here. Okay.
So we just plumb it up at the other side and start fastening the top plate. 99?
100 and a half.
Standard 16-inch centers. So it's simple, it's sturdy, and it's moisture-proof. Thanks, Dino. And that's a wrap in Dumbo. Come home again next time when we'll be working on the front facade, power washing it to remove decades of dirt. Till then, I'm Bob Vila. It's good to have you home again. Visit bobvila.com for everything you need to get the job done right. You'll find Home Again highlights, interactive tools for planning your next project, and helpful how-to articles for every room in your home. bobvila.com, the ultimate home site.